In Chicago, you know that all sports rock. The Bears, Hawks, Bulls, Cubs, and Sox. Pick your favorite, you can choose. As long as the Packers lose. For everything you need to know, it's Bill Swerski Sports Talk Chicago. Bill Swerski Sports Talk Chicago.
Hey everybody, welcome to another edition of Bill Swerski Sports Talk Chicago. This is your hosts, Alex and Sean. On this episode, we are going to be talking about the shit show that is the Chicago Bears head coach search. We'll be talking some Bulls, we'll be talking some Blackhawks, and more. But first, I'd like to thank our sponsor, the Rockford Ice Hogs. If you're not familiar with the Rockford Ice Hogs, they're the AHL minor league affiliate of the Chicago Blackhawks. What does that mean for you? You get to see the stars of tomorrow today at family-friendly, affordable prices. You didn't hear, the Ice Hogs will get the AHL All-Star game next season. So make sure you head on over to icehogs.com, get yourself a hat, shirt, jersey, tickets, and more. Tell them Swerski Sports sent you. Alex, how did it feel to be a week out from the Bears season being over?
Well, I got to tell you, all these rumors, just you hear all these things, you see all this stuff on Twitter and whatnot, and after a while, it just drives you crazy because there are a lot of people out there that claim to have intel. And listen, if Ian Rappaport says something, I listen to Ian Rappaport. When you see others reporting it, you shrug your shoulders. And there's a lot of smoke in a lot of areas. And kind of with me, it's funny. I feel like I'm on a Ben Johnson roller coaster because there are hours one day where I actually feel pretty confident that the Bears are going to go that route. And then I think about, oh, maybe not, because one, can Tom Brady woo him to the Raiders, which I don't know why he would go to the Raiders, but also the Bears are interviewing a lot of people, and more people are coming up on this list. I mean, just look at today. They interviewed Ron Rivera. We heard them report that they're going to talk to Marcus Freeman, and they had just concluded interviews with some other candidates too, outside of Ben Johnson. So
They
there's all this smoke around it.
they have interviewed Pete Carroll, Aaron Glenn, Ben Johnson, Mike Kafka, Drew Petzing, Mike Vrabel, Anthony Weaver, Ron Rivera. They have requested interviews with Joe Brady, Thomas Brown, Matt Campbell, the Iowa State head coach, Brian Flores, Marcus Freeman, Cliff Kingsbury, Todd Monken, David Shaw, and Arthur Smith.
Can we cross Arthur Smith off that list, please?
He should not have been on there in the first place.
Yeah, no, I no. And okay, am I reading too much into this?
No,
The the
whatever it is, no.
the whole Marcus Freeman thing. The fact that that comes out after they hire Ben Johnson is am I what's your take on that? Is it a safety valve?
I don't know. The Marcus Freeman thing screams George McCaskey to me. I
It
don't know why. It just screams like, well, he seems very safe and he's from Notre Dame, so Bears fans will like him. Um, like it just screams George McCaskey.
and here's the thing. I really like Marcus Freeman. I really, really do. But for this job at this time,
No, you can't.
no.
Like Marcus Freeman is doing a phenomenal job at Notre Dame. Phenomenal.
Hmm.
Especially the way the situation that he was put as head coach or the head coach of Notre Dame. Uh, what he's done in that short amount of time is pretty remarkable. Um, there is nothing. I'm not dinging him as a head coach, but this is a very specific situation with a team that has had a history of bad decisions. This is one of those, what the fuck, if you were to hire him. And again, it has nothing to do with Marcus Freeman. It would have everything to do with the Bears. Is you have a situation where uh you have a guy that's still out there That is the guy. Ben Johnson. That's
Mm-hmm.
the guy.
Mm-hmm.
And from the early on stages of this, all the talking heads were like, "Oh, it's going to be between the Bears and the Patriots for what's the best situation for Ben Johnson to go to." And uh,
It was Rabel all along
it
with the
was it
Patriots.
was Vrabel before they even fired Gerard Mayo.
Yeah.
Um, and they immediately did their two Rooney Rule hire or interviews, posted them in the same image on the same day at the same time. Hey, we interviewed these two guys. On to Vrabel, and they negotiated with him like the day they interviewed him. It was always Vrabel. So it would just seem to me that this is Ben Johnson is to the Bears, is theirs if they don't screw it up. It's
Right.
not going to be him being wooed by somebody else. It's going to be the Bears messing this up. And they're already doing a good job by interviewing so many stupid people.
I mean, listen, like, okay, how about this exercise? Let's go down the list and say good interview, bad interview for all the candidates that they have and will interview. You want to do that?
Sure. Pete,
Okay.
Pete Carroll.
I think that's a good interview. You're not going to hire him, but I think that's a good brain to pick.
Yes. And it's one of those ones that nobody Ben Johnson's not going to be like, oh yeah, that's a realistic competition. They get it. All right. I'm with you. Aaron Glenn,
Fine.
Ben Johnson,
That's the guy.
Mike Kafka,
Nah,
bad. I'm saying bad.
yeah, yeah.
He may one day be a candidate. That is not now. That is not now. A bad hire or bad interview. Drew Petzing.
Nah.
I'm going bad interview. Like not saying he's a bad coordinator, just this doesn't make any sense. Um, Mike Vrabel.
I mean, I feel like that's one where even though you know it wasn't going to be the guy, you kind of felt like you had to do it, if that makes sense.
You know, I think we all thought the Vrabel to the Patriots made sense,
Right.
but you never know with Robert Kraft, and maybe Vrabel didn't want to go there. And maybe I like we saw Gronk start to dig into to Robert Kraft on the air last week. So like maybe so I think you had to interview him. Uh,
Yes. Yeah, because I could think of it this way is do I think Vrabel was the right fit for this situation? No. But the fact of the matter is, if you're looking at the more experienced coaches available with head coaching experience, Vrabel was kind of the number one guy. And like to your point, if something happened with Kraft and it wasn't a shoe-in and you didn't interview him and he went somewhere else, that would not be a good look on you. So I do feel like you had to as well.
here's how I would describe Vrabel. Was was he the wrong choice? Absolutely not. But was he the right choice? Probably not.
Right. Right.
Like if Ben Johnson goes somewhere else and you settle for Mike Vrabel, it's not the wrong choice. I don't think he's going to lead you to the promised land where you want to be. And he's going to be one of those guys like Lovey where you fire him just because it's not going to get you to where you want to be, but there's not anything terribly wrong either. Um, that's Mike Vrabel, and he's going to give you a huge boost this off season or this coming season because you're not going to have dumb plays. You're not going to be making those dumb mistakes, and guys are going to be disciplined.
You darn well know that that team would play for him.
Yes, but I don't think they would be, especially after I'm hearing rumblings that Tommy Reese is going to be his offensive coordinator. I don't like that choice.
Yeah, I don't either. That was tweeted out what, like within the past hour or so.
Yeah, it was recently.
Yeah, so, but still. You had to talk. You had to talk to the number one experienced guy on the board.
Yeah. Anthony Weaver.
I don't really have feelings there.
I I don't I don't think that was a good interview.
Yeah, I don't want to call it bad, but I'm not going to say it was like whoa.
I just again goes to I put that in the Marcus Freeman. Just is he a bad coach? No, it's just this is a very specific situation the Bears are in. They can't screw this up again.
Well, and here's the thing too is let's say Ben Johnson is your guy, but you're talking to all these people. I don't know what's been talked about in that room, so I really don't know. But is there a message being sent to Ben Johnson that, maybe they don't value him? It could be just me overthinking. Again, we don't know what the questions are, but my kind of hope was after the Ben Johnson interview, we wouldn't hear about any more new interviews. There were still interviews to be done no matter what after Ben Johnson, but the fact that we're hearing more about it.
Yes, that I want to get to that afterwards, but you're right on the head on that.
Hmm.
All right, Ron Rivera.
I was a big Riverboat Ron fan for a very, very long time. But I don't think now that's a good interview.
I'm on the fence. If you would have kept this a short list, like a real short list, and it was Pete Carroll, Ron Rivera, Mike Vrabel, Ben Johnson, Aaron Glenn, and Thomas Brown, I'm okay with it
Sure.
because you're like, okay, it's especially after Mike McCarthy was denied.
Yes.
Like you kind of swap them out. You're like, okay, this is a guy who knows what it's like to win a Super Bowl. He's coached multiple teams. He's been a defensive coordinator. He's been here as a player. He's been here as a coach.
Chicago.
He knows Chicago. He knows ownership. I and and he also satisfies the Rooney Rule, which I'm not big on just checking the box, but it does satisfy it with a quality with a coach with a resume. Like it's a legitimate coach with a resume. I
Right.
I don't think he's the right guy for this job, but I think out of respect and the fact that you can learn a lot from that interview, if you kept that to a short list, especially after Mike McCarthy was denied, I think this was fine. But the fact that they added him late and it's like 20 interviews, this was
That's what I don't like.
yeah. Joe Brady,
That's a good interview.
yes. Thomas
And,
Brown.
yeah.
Oh, sorry,
That
Joe Brady. Go ahead.
well, I was just going to say about Joe Brady is I kind of downplayed him a little bit because, I've been in the Ben Johnson or bust, camp. But I will say this. Watch the offense that they run in Buffalo. And you can see where that with Caleb Williams, you see something that could work that hypothetically, right?
Yes, and here's my concern. And Joe Brady's running a great offense, especially after they did addition by subtraction. They got rid of their best wide receiver in the offseason and got better.
Yes.
And the way he's been doing things is fantastic. The way he's helped Josh Allen um, uh, him grow from really, really, really good to phenomenal is, that's great. My concern is just the lack of experience. Like Ben Johnson has been in that role for several years and he's he knows that role inside and out. And then now he's gone, once you're in a role and you know the role, then you get to learn the other responsibilities and learn from your settings. And you're learning from Dan Campbell what does work and what doesn't work and how to motivate guys. And that's why I feel a lot more comfortable. Joe Brady might be a phenomenal head coach. I don't know what to expect. He's coming in as an offensive coordinator without a ton of experience to a head coach. Who knows how that plays out? I have much more confidence in it playing out with Ben Johnson than I do with Joe Brady. But I think I agree with you that it is it is a very good interview because he's a guy that deserves to be interviewed.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think you hit the nail on the head there. The concern of the lack of experience, I think, is something. And, I don't watch every Bills game, but I feel like when I watch Bills games now, you see Josh Allen, he uses every weapon in his arsenal and like he can do it all. He can throw deep, he can run, he can take a check down. He's really really good at all that stuff, but we saw over the past few years before this year, he was susceptible to kind of that gunslinger mentality and he would throw some picks. I feel like it hasn't been quite as prominent this year. And, you look at what he's done and you look at what Lamar Jackson has done. It's like, okay, you have two very good players right there that are both in line to win the MVP. And what Joe Brady helps do in that system is play to all of his strengths.
Absolutely. And so I'm it's a plus, it's a definite A plus interview. Um, it just he's behind Ben Johnson in my mind.
Yes, Ben Johnson is number one. There is no 1A. It's Ben Johnson followed by everybody else.
Yeah. Thomas Brown, that one's a you had to interview him no matter.
That's a necessity. You just have to do it.
Um, Matt Campbell, head coach of Iowa State.
No, no, no.
Dumb. That was a waste and dumb. I don't know what you're learning from that, and he's not a serious candidate. Brian Flores.
I'm not surprised that they interviewed him. I've said before, I like Brian Flores. I don't think he's the right guy for this job in this situation. But I feel like if you are going to do your due diligence, that's kind of another one of those guys where you kind of have to talk to him.
I'm okay with it. He can't be a serious contender though.
No, no.
Um,
But if
you
you're
know,
looking at somebody to kind of give you advice on being a leader type, as cliche and annoying as douchey as that sounds, I think Brian Flores is an okay guy to talk to.
and he's in your division. He's seen you multiple times.
Yeah, exactly. Pick the brain a little bit of your opponent.
Um, and he's also a viable candidate for not your head coaching job, but a head coaching job. Because like I said, this is a unique situation, and Brian Flores had a situation that was fairly similar and did bad at that. You can't pair him until he's completely rehabilitated. You cannot pair him with a young quarterback again.
No, we saw what happened with Tua. We know
Yeah.
that there was some bad stuff there.
Yeah, but he's also, like I said, he's a candidate that is qualified to be a head coach in 2025, and he is a Rooney interview. Um, let's see, Marcus Freeman. I think we went through this one. I agree with you. It annoys the shit out of me that he was announced after they interviewed Ben Johnson. After you interview Ben Johnson, you should not be offering interviews to anybody else.
Right, you should just get through the ones you already had scheduled.
Yes. If you interviewed Ben Johnson and you like it would boggle my mind if you didn't feel good enough about that one to at least say, yeah, we're not going to bring new people in. We're just going to do the list that we've already established. But after interviewing with him, are either the options here in this situation, in my mind, who knows if I'm right? This is just guesswork. Is one, either the Ben Johnson interview was terrible and you feel the need to cast that net wider. Two, it went really well, but you have an uneasy feeling that he is going somewhere else. So you're casting a wider net. Three, there is no cohesion between owner, president, and general manager. and they're just adding people willy-nilly because they can't agree on anything. And one
And
of those seems the most likely.
yeah, I mean, can I add something else? I don't know because this all happens behind the scenes. Did they want to line up Marcus Freeman earlier, but because of the college football playoff, they couldn't? Is it possible that Marcus Freeman was on their radar well before, but they couldn't actually request an interview? Again, I don't know. The fact that they said, though, like they want to talk to him today, it makes it sound like an afterthought. So I really don't know. Now, the other thing I want to point out with Ben Johnson, too, is if you look at the situation, okay, it's the Bears, it's going back to Detroit, it's the Raiders, and people like to point out the Tom Brady effect, even though the Raiders don't have a quarterback and you don't have a strong quarterback draft class. The Jaguars, I thought, were a real threat, but unless they fire their general manager, I'm not so sure about that one. And I don't think it's going to be the Jets, right?
No. Did they even I don't think they requested an interview with him, did they?
I haven't heard his name in the Jets come up, but either way, I don't think it's unless something crazy happens, you never know. It sounds like they've been interviewing other candidates. I saw something, some people were speculating, and this is just pure speculation. People were looking at Aaron Glenn going to the Jets, and I could see that.
That seems a much more Jets head coaching hire.
Right, exactly. For better or for worse.
Yeah. Um, and I can't see him Ben Johnson going to the Saints either. They
No,
they've got
no.
cap hell that they keep pushing off. That's eventually gonna they're gonna have to pay the piper.
Do-do-do-do-do-do-do-do.
Um, the the Jaguars job on paper, you're like, okay, you can make a case for this. Is
You make a big case for it.
you have a quarterback who was the number one overall pick and was thought to be like a generational type guy coming out. You've got a lot of cap space. You've got a good wide receiver there. Um, Warm weather city and an owner who is loaded. I guess they're all loaded, but he's not team poor like the McCaskies. But they didn't fire their GM, who was terrible. And then they said that they would fire him for the right coach.
Right.
Like, I, I mean, to me, I don't. If I'm Ben Johnson, I'm not taking that seriously because I'm like, you know what? If I go in there and like I think that guy stinks, then they're going to fire him, and then everyone's going to know they fired him because I didn't want him, even though I didn't want him. But I don't want to be the reason that they fired him. It's just a bad situation to walk into. I I would probably frown my face at that. And as far as the Raiders, I, I just have this feeling that it is leverage. It is leverage to say to teams that are interested in Ben Johnson, basically the Bears, hey, don't fumble this because other teams want me. You can't just string me along. Um, I don't think the Raiders is serious because listen, Tom Brady's the partial owner, but he's the minority owner. Does he only own like 10% of the team or something like that?
It's a small percent, but he seems to have a lot of influence there.
Yeah, but that crazy bad haircut owner, like that guy just
He looks like a Dr. Seuss character.
oh my God. He's got 70s Pete Rose hair.
He does. But you know what's funny? At the end of the day, he's a billionaire, so he laughs about it.
Oh, have you seen his girlfriend?
I have not.
Oh my God. Just it's like and then he said, "Oh, she didn't even know I was rich." I'm like, "Yeah, she did." Yeah.
Dude,
She saw your haircut and went, "That guy is rich." But he's crazy. His dad was crazy. He's crazy. And they're going to do crazy things regardless of what Tom Brady says. And uh, they don't have a quarterback. I agree with you. I'm not high on this quarterback draft class. And don't they draft like seventh or something?
Yeah, it's
So they're going to have to trade up
yeah.
to get one of these quarterbacks, and you don't know if you're going to get one. And your roster's got a couple of guys, but mostly it's lacking talent. It just seems like a recipe for disaster stepping in there.
Yeah, I that whole situation is always just so weird there. I think that when you look at the Raiders over the years, you usually expect the unexpected, but the unexpected is usually something that makes you scratch your head. So I don't know, man. I just want this whole thing to be over with.
Yeah. Um, like you look at the list of Raiders head coaches, and they don't last that long. Uh, let's see. Um, Antonio Pierce, he was a interim and then 1 season. Josh McDaniels was at 2 seasons. Rich Bisaccia, 1 season. John Gruden, 2 seasons.
Oh, there's a whole other conversation right there.
Uh, Jack Del Rio, 3 seasons. Tony Sperano, 1 season. Dennis Allen, is it 2 or 3 seasons? Hugh Jackson, 1 season. Tom Cable, 3 seasons. Lane Kiffin, 2 seasons. Like Norv Turner, 2 seasons. Like they fire head coaches way more than the Bears. It is not a stable job. Like why on earth would you want to go there? Like they don't draft well. Their ownership drafts. They always draft the dumbest person. Like they either draft somebody 2 rounds too early or a guy that's a phenomenal athlete that's just not a good football player. It is crazy. Yeah, since 2001, they've had Bill Callahan, Norv Turner, Art Shell, Lane Kiffin, Tom Cable, Hugh Jackson, Dennis Allen, Tony Sperano, Jack Del Rio, John Gruden, uh, Rich Bisaccia, Josh McDaniels, Antonio Pierce is their head coach.
Hmm. I want to get back to John Gruden in a minute before we look at these other guys that they're interviewing. But I do have something I want to say there.
Um, yeah, so let's see, finish up these interviews. Cliff Kingsbury. I've You interviewed from offensive coordinator and didn't think you should hire him. So I don't know what's going to change now. Like
Yeah, yeah.
that seems like a not that he's not worthy of an interview, but it just seems like it's like breaking up with a girl and then asking her back out after she gets a glow up.
Yeah, I mean, I don't hate them talking, but it's kind of like, okay,
Um, Todd Monken. I'm okay with this one.
is that the guy from the Ravens?
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, I'm okay with that one too.
David Shaw. Um, if
Uh,
if they would have interviewed him several years ago, okay. And if you told me Ian Cunningham was leaving and you were going to interview David Shaw, and this might be, I'm going to put this out there. The David Shaw interview, if Ian Cunningham leaves and gets a GM spot, do not be shocked if they hire David Shaw to be the assistant GM. I
okay.
I don't think this is a head coaching interview. I think this is a assistant GM, but you can't hire your assistant GM because your assistant GM is still there. Um, so that's what I think that is. He's so removed from coaching, it just doesn't seem to make any sense to me. And then last one, Arthur Smith.
No,
Yeah,
no thanks. No thanks.
yeah,
No thanks.
no, want no part of that.
Hey, things started off good over there in Steelersville. But yeah, boy, not just the playoff game, but the last few weeks of the season, the Steelers just have not looked good. I mean, they were humming for a bit, and then I want to say Philly beat them. They either lost that game or the week before. I remember when they lost to Philly, but it just since then they just have not looked that great. And last night against the Ravens. When you go down 21-0 against Derrick Henry, yeah, you're not coming back and winning that.
Yeah, I
But
mean,
no, Mike Tomlin ain't going anywhere.
no. And I feel bad because people are blaming Mike Tomlin, but here's the predicament. Mike Tomlin keeps them competitive every year. They don't have an elite quarterback. They don't have a path to get to one. So they are not bad enough to be able to draft one of those studs. So, but he keeps them good enough so they're never going to be that bad, but they can't get over that hump until they get a better quarterback. It's it's a it's kind of like a purgatory almost. It's like the Steelers might just have to, not this year, but they might have to pony up uh and try to trade up for one. I think they're probably their best situation might be to bring Justin Fields back to be QB1 next year.
Yeah, I mean, Russ was the thing with Russell Wilson. It was kind of weird. Like if you look at this year and you look at what he did, even in if you just look at the numbers even from last night, it's like, okay, last night statistically he didn't have a bad game. But, there's more that goes to it. And then you look too at his overall numbers. Now, keep in mind, he missed the first few weeks, so he didn't play a full season. Here you go. Here are the numbers: 11 games, 2,482 passing yards, 16 TDs to 5 interceptions, and a QB rating just over 100. Like the numbers look okay, but if you sit down and you watch it, you see where he's just not the elite guy that he once was. Obviously, was it as painful as he was his first year in Denver? No, absolutely not. But I mean, there was a time when Russell Wilson was a Pro Bowler. He was not an MVP, but within that discussion, he would give you 4,000 yards, he'd give you 30 to 40 touchdown passes. But, now he's not quite at that level. And I don't think it's just the quarterback either. I just don't think the Steelers. I'm not saying they're a bad team, but they're not the alphas that they once were. And it's been this way for the past few years where you're like, okay, they're going to be in the playoffs and then they're going to be one and done. I compared them to the 2010s Red Wings before they just completely fell apart. It's like, okay, they're going to do enough just to get in and then they're not going to win anything. I think if you had lesser coaches than Mike Tomlin in Pittsburgh, you don't get to the playoffs like you do with Mike Tomlin. I don't think the roster is good enough to win anything meaningful in January.
Right.
That was our Steelers nugget of the day.
But I'm embarrassed. And this is not even unique to Ryan Poles. Remember when after the double doink, the Bears kicker uh
Cody Parkey.
no, but the situation the Bears put themselves in trying to find a kicker, and
Oh yeah.
they had fans kicking and they brought a bunch of kick like it, and then remember when they needed tight ends? So then they had like 12 tight ends in camp. Like they just can't do anything regular. It's like they're the weird kid. Like, just can't you do it regular? Why do you got to do it weird? Just do
Why
it.
can't you be normal?
Uh,
Oh God. Oh God. Now you're putting that thought in my head where these coaching interviews are like the Ryan Pace tight end situation, where it's like you had a bunch of at best borderline NFL tight ends.
yeah,
Obviously, then you finally signed uh, Jimmy Graham and drafted Cole Kmet, but for those few years, you had like J.P. Holtz and you tried Trey Burton. That didn't work, which is too bad because I love that move. But and then you tried Adam Shaheen. Remember that whole thing? My dumbass bought hard on that baby Gronk thing. Ugh. I won't go down that road, but yeah, that was brutal.
Yeah. I mean, that's what we do.
Yeah. So I don't know. I don't know what's going to happen. Maybe by the time you're listening to this show, something happens. Obviously, with a lot of these coaches that are still in the playoffs, they can't sign anything, but they can agree to something. And I just feel like right now you're in the driver's seat with Ben Johnson, but you have to actually turn on the car and drive to where you want to go.
Yeah, you don't want to turn the guy off and just stop with your shenanigans. Don't interview dumb people. Like, it's fine. I'm all for it if you're like we're doing due diligence and you're looking into guys' record and asking, you know, indirectly people that you might know that knows them, like, whoa, what's he like? But you don't have to request a formal interview with everybody.
Yeah, picking the brains and doing your due diligence is fine. There are just some of these candidates where I'm just like, I don't know. And the timing with some of these candidates that bothering me. Like you said, if you would have had a wide pool of like legitimate candidates, okay, what did we talk about after they fired Eberflus? Doing your due diligence. Okay, fine. It's just you got to be careful on how you approach this. And maybe by the great grace of God, they do get it right. I don't know what's going to happen, but I thought the timing of the Freeman thing was weird. That's what bothers me more than anything else. Fine. Okay, you're going to talk to Pete Carroll. Fine. You're going to talk to Aaron Glenn. Fine. You're going to talk to the coordinators from Buffalo and Baltimore. Fine. Okay. Heck, I was okay with the idea of them talking to Mike McCarthy. I just didn't want them to hire Mike McCarthy. And I feel like at the end of the day, he's just going to wind up back in Dallas. But I wouldn't have mind picking the brain a little bit. I joked around on Twitter saying, oh, phew, we dodged a bullet. But in all reality, if you were to pick his brain, okay, I just would never want to hire him. Although it would feel like something they would do. Just don't overthink it. If Ben Johnson is your guy, get your guy. Okay, great. You picked the brains, you got some information. That's awesome. But if he is still your guy, then go get your guy. But I don't know what the interest level is exactly between the two. Is Ben Johnson 1A on their list? Or are they just not sure? Do they not have a 1A, 1B? I'm sure they have some sort of list, but is Ben Johnson number one? I don't know. Is Ben Johnson the desired place for him to go? Or is Ben Johnson where he wants to go is the Bears? There's some reports to suggest that he is, but at the end of the day, we don't know. And you hear all these things on the internet, and you're just like, gah.
Yeah, I try not to I try not to read because there's so much out there and then you don't know. Like there's a bunch of Twitter accounts where they're just making stuff up.
Oh,
Like
yeah.
how nobody believes you. Like or I mean sad thing is there's people that do believe them. But like why does anybody believe you? But
Right.
also, you know, several years ago, uh assistant head coach or assistant coaches, they made good money compared to regular people, but they didn't make this like ungodly amount of money. They were making like $400,000 and $500,000 a year, which is a lot of money. But when you think like, yeah, like you could get fired after a year and have to go a year without a job, and you're probably only coaching like 15 years, and then that's the rest of your money for your life, unless you go try to do something else. Um, but now you look and like Ben Johnson's probably making around 3.5, $4 million a year, my guess, as a uh as an offensive coordinator. That's a lot of money. Like
Mm-hmm.
he's probably earned enough money on this contract where he doesn't need to do anything else ever. And and if he gets hired by the Bears, I'm my guess is they're going to have to pay him around $16 million a year and a 5-year deal. So, like, sure, he's going to have a lot of money as an offensive coordinator where he doesn't need to do anything he doesn't want to do. But An $80 million contract. It's a lot of money. It's a lot of money.
Well, let me ask you this. In all honesty, are you concerned that the Bears are not going to hire him because of money? I might be delusional. I might be stupid, but believe it or not, I'm not worried about money being a factor here. I'm actually not worried about that.
If George buys in, if you have to convince George that Ben Johnson's the guy, I think the money could be an issue. But if George is on board, I don't think the money is going to be an object.
That's my hope. It's not the money for me. It's they see something, they hear something, and they don't like it. Ben Johnson has some sort of wish or demand if he were to come here, or he said something that doesn't, quote, align with the search committee values and what George wants. But what drives me crazy is we hear all about the committee, who's on the committee, who's going to be part of it. It's basically going to be the entire hierarchy. It's going to be George McCaskey, Kevin Warren, the president and CEO, Ryan Poles, and a few other guys. So it's the hierarchy all involved here. But then they say, well, Ryan Poles is making the hire. So tell me this, when you say Ryan Poles is making the hire, do you mean he gets the final decision? Or is it literally just saying, yeah, he gets the hire. He's the one that extends the job offer, but that job offer is a consensus pick from a majority of our minds.
There is zero, there is zero evidence that you can sell me that it is 100% Ryan Poles' decision. Zero. The fact that the only way you could convince me of that without me being in the room hearing it being done is if George and Kevin were not in the interviews. The interviews should be Ryan Poles and Ian Cunningham. That's it.
If Ian Cunningham's around, he's been interviewing for other jobs, but yes, I agree.
Um,
I know. I mean, as soon as Ryan Poles said, "Oh, George McCaskey's going to be involved," I almost hurled my breakfast. But I wasn't surprised.
no, and why are they bringing HR into the interviews and like the list of people that were there was way too many people to be in an interview.
Seriously, what are we? You have a football operation for a reason. The only positive I can say about this process is okay, you're picking the brains of many minds. Fine. I don't agree with all of them. The timing of them is weird, like we mentioned. You're not limiting yourself necessarily. And at least there's no Ernie Accorsi or Bill Polian.
Yeah,
Right.
here's the interviews. It's George McCaskey, Kevin Warren, Ryan Poles, Matt Feinstein, Jeff King, and Liz Geist. Like, why are that many people there? Why?
I don't get it.
Why is HR involved? HR should not be involved unless they're there. Like, are you going to sexually harass anybody? Are you going
It's Toby Flenderson.
to, or his twin brother in Colorado?
Yeah. Ben Johnson, if they hire Ben Johnson, he's going to treat Toby Flenderson like Michael does.
God, no.
No! Ben Johnson shows up his first day of work. HR sits down at their desk and there's a brick with a note saying, suck on this.
Uh,
You know, another thing I want to mention too, that whole press conference, because we didn't even get to that yet.
no.
We have to get to that, right?
Uh,
Where do you start?
Kevin Warren's annoying. Can we agree with that?
Yes. Yes. I don't think he's a bad guy. He's a really irritating cornball, and some of the
I,
stuff he says just really does irritate me.
I wish the Bobs were here so they can be like, what is it that you say you do around here? What does Kevin Warren do? Like he was brought in to be the stadium guy. Where's the stadium? Literally, where are you putting it?
You
Where
don't even know.
like we've got our eyes set on. You have been in this job for like a year and a half and you don't know where the stadium's going to be, let alone how you're paying for it or when you're starting. Like
Yeah.
should be your job. Like I could not work for a boss like that. Like if I'm Ryan Poles, I'm telling George like no, you get zero say in who the head coach is. Kevin Warren, stay in your lane, get a stadium built. Get out of my way. And
Can we
if you
also
fire me,
talk
fire me.
can we also talk about the whole thing with, is Ryan Poles really a lame duck? And then what did Kevin Warren say? A year is like a lifetime?
Yes.
What? What? What does that mean?
That means he's backtracking on the fact that Ryan Poles is safe. That is one step above Shad Khan being like sitting next to Trent Baalke going, oh yeah, I'd totally fire this guy if there was a good coach that said he needed firing. Like, all right. Like
Shad
that
Shad
is
Khan doesn't give a fuck.
that is one step above that. This is basically saying like, yeah. He's totally safe. Dig a little deeper. Well, I didn't say he was safe. I just said, you know, a year's a lifetime.
I'm just like, dude, do you not know how this works? Do you realize that no matter what, a year under contract is a year under contract? I just don't get it.
Yeah, it is such a clown show, and the hope is that they get this head coach hire right. And I'm not saying they might get it right, but if they do, it'll be one of those situations where a broken clock is right twice a day.
If Ben Johnson is your guy, and if Ben Johnson is who he is, then you would almost put him in a category where you're like, he's Bears proof. Like you can't mess up something like this, you
And,
know?
and it does, and it by if he's hired by some miracle, by the grace of God, and you start winning, it starts minimizing how much we hear from George and Kevin. It makes less decisions for George and Kevin. If you start winning, what decisions does George have to make? You're not going to be like, we need to fire a coach during the middle of his contract. We need to trade up for a quarterback. No, it takes away all of those big decisions. And okay, George just goes and he sits in there and tries to dig purple crayon out of his nose. And Kevin actually does his job and looks for places to put a stadium. It takes away those decisions. It minimizes more things that they can screw up.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
it just if you could go back in time and with Biff's book, like you hire Bruce Arians and then uh you draft Patrick Mahomes and suddenly all of these mistakes that George under his leadership, quote leadership, that they made wrong, they don't get made. They just well, it didn't need to be made, so he couldn't screw it up. Can you imagine
Right.
Bruce Arians with Patrick Mahomes?
Ugh. Don't do that to me.
Uh, but the more you do things wrong, gives them more opportunity to do wrong things going forward. And they have to get this right, and they can't do an outside the box thing. They've got to do the right thing. They've got it right there. Your real biggest competition was Boston, the Patriots, New England Patriots. That was your biggest competition for Ben Johnson. He is he is they are off the table. You are competing against teams that are bigger mess ups than you. And there's only two of them. Like it's 3-person race and you're racing against two paraplegics and you got working legs. Like just win the race. Just all you have to do to win the race is finish the race. Don't do something dumb like stop and smell the flowers and then get lost. Like just don't mess up.
Stop and smell the purple crayons.
Uh, uh, I stopped and I wanted a snack, so I went to open a pudding container and I couldn't get the lid off, so I borrowed a knife and then I stabbed my hand and I had to go to the hospital and get stitches. And that's why I couldn't finish the race.
Okay. God. Speaking of which, we have to talk about the elephants in the room, right?
Go for it.
First of all, and I'm going to nitpick here because I'm biased here. I'm going to nitpick. George McCaskey starting off his little press conference with, let's not talk over everybody. Let's all be respectful. Kiss my ass, George. Like, what a condescending jerk off way to act. And even if he's not trying to be, just, oh, that bothers me. It really, really does. But that's not even the main point. You hear about him taking accountability. Blah, blah, blah. Ultimately, my responsibility. And the worst thing is, somebody on 670 The Score did a montage. Did you hear this montage?
Oh yeah, it was the end of the year montage. Yeah, I heard that.
Over the past decade, when they fired Tressman, then they fired Fox, then they fired Nagy, and now that we're going on to our next coach, it's it's a broken record. It's the same thing played over and over and over again. It doesn't stop. It doesn't stop. And then my two least favorite quotes were, "Oh, well, do you think it's important to have the GM and the coach aligned?" "No, I don't think so. I think if they want the job." Like, do you not know how this works? Are you that oblivious?
I
Are
will say
you that oblivious?
I will say this. Do you need to get their contracts so they end the same time? No. But like if your GM has 3 years left on his deal and you're going to give your head coach 5-year deal, I don't see an issue like having to align them on the date. But if you have a GM that's got 1 year left on the deal, which is what the rumors are, because they don't make the salaries or the terms public. But the rumor is that Ryan Poles has 1 year left on his deal. That is a different situation than like, oh, he's got 4 years left and we were going to give our head coach five. Like we have to add 1 year on. Like I don't think that matters.
Well, I'm talking about the lame duck situation,
But
not necessarily the exact time.
yeah, the lame duck situation. Of course, you want to know that who's there and that like you align in your philosophies of how you plan to do things. Is, maybe your head coach is like, listen, I need to have some input on draft. Like, you could take final call of who, but let me give you feedback. Like, yeah, this guy, this guy fits with the system I'm trying to run, or, whatever. Like, be aligned in what you're doing. Like,
And maybe it works out. Maybe if they do hire Ben Johnson, they see a way to make this work. But that just blah. But the other thing I wanted to bring up from George McCaskey was the whole thing about, what was it, the hierarchy, how he put it, it was, or the succession. Well, this is how it goes. You know, this person reports to this person reports to that person, this person reports to me. Okay, I get that's how you've done things. I understand it. What, and again, I'm nitpicking this because it's the Bears. because it's the Bears and how they have for so long played the it's not fine, but it's fine. The, oh, we need to be better, but this is our way of doing things. Look, if you want to court top end guys, you're kind of sending a message, and maybe they speak it differently in the interviews. Maybe what they say publicly isn't what we should always take, but just knowing how the Bears have run, you know, you got to be willing to go outside of how you do things. You got
Especially when it's not working.
exactly. Like, listen, you can make a scenario where if Ben Johnson doesn't want Kevin Warren involved in football operations, you know what? You should be willing to do that. You should be willing to do that. Because has Kevin Warren ever been a football operations executive before?
No.
He's been a sports president and CFO, and he's the Big Ten commissioner, all on the business operations side. But the actual football operations, yes, you hired technically a sports president, but you didn't hire a football czar. You didn't hire a mastermind who has been a coach, been a player, and has won as a football decision maker. So if you wanted to hire somebody who thought was best of the job, and this person said they don't want like a business op type like Kevin Warren getting involved in football operations, then you should abide to that sort of thing.
Is especially if you're starting to hear it from multiple people, multiple candidates that are top candidates, that they don't want that. Yeah, start listening.
Is it
Like,
possible? Is it I'm just going to riddle me this really quick. Is it possible that Ryan Poles may be interviewing, and I don't know if it's just him choosing the interviews. I don't know if Warren is involved or not, but is he choosing a lot of these interviews to try to get some of these guys to say, you know what, you should really operate like this and not like this as a way to show George McCaskey something? Is that possible?
I, I that's possible. I mean, that would be slick if that's the case.
Uh huh. Just throwing it out there. Anyway,
And I will say this. If Ben Johnson does not end up being the head coach of the Chicago Bears, it is George and Kevin's fault. Period. There's You'll never convince me otherwise. It won't because somebody else offered a better option or a better deal. It'll be because of George and Kevin. Um, the other
so
one,
many bad cooks in the kitchen.
the other George thing was when he was asked about uh the sell the team chance.
Oh my God, I
And he
forgot about
said
that.
what was worse was the Lions taking over Soldier Field, which is that, I mean, that number one, you're turning it on the fans. Why on earth are Bears fans going to want to come out and sit in the cold weather and watch their team get their ass kicked when they could sell that ticket and make a profit? Like,
And
and
didn't you?
and then it comes out afterwards after he chastises the fans. He takes no responsibility for himself for being George McCaskey is the biggest dipshit in the NFL, hands down. And instead of taking any ownership in his house and Hallis Hall must not have any mirrors in it because George does not do any self-reflecting. He tries to turn it on the fans, and then it comes out the guy from Circa Sports and Casino says that George sold him his food box, and he's a Lions fan.
I laughed out loud when that was revealed. What a schmuck.
George McCaskey is a dipshit.
What a schmuck.
Ugh.
But it was another bad press conference in a long line of bad press conferences for this franchise.
Yeah, it's embarrassing. And they don't realize how embarrassing they are. And honestly, nobody is willing to tell them. Like George, George talks to the fans, but he sends somebody out there first to make sure that they say nice things. Like, all right, say it without swearing. Maybe he'll hear it. George, you are embarrassing. You are an embarrassment. Like your grandfather would have fired you and probably dunked your head in the toilet.
Heck, what would his uncle have said?
It's embarrassing.
Dunked your head. Just the mental image of George S. Hallis coming down and dunking his head in the toilet. That is rich.
It, it's just, and giving him a wedgie beforehand. Oh,
Uh,
hanging by the flagpole by his underwear. It, it, it's just a dweeb and an embarrassment. And I, just even thinking about it, like we're gonna mess this up. We're gonna mess this up, and we're gonna hire somebody that's wrong for the job.
that's the fear.
Like there, and I guarantee, based on who they hire, I will tell you who ended up with the loudest voice in the room.
Oh yeah, of course. That's gonna be the big breakdown. That's gonna be the analysis that everyone's gonna be doing.
I
Like,
mean,
all right, how'd they louse this up?
George McCaskey, he wants Tony Dungy to be the head, like a Tony Dungy head coach, a a very religious man, very soft spoken, always has positive things to say, uh, leads with calm and like that's who he, that's who he wants. Win, lose or draw, that's who he wants.
Hmm.
And it's not how you're going to win. Not how you win. Like Andy Reid, he plays a nice guy on TV, but like Andy Reid is willing to. Andy Reid will give anybody a shot. You murdered three people and you're out on bail. Andy Reid, if you can throw a pass or catch a pass or run a 4-2, he will put you on the team. He does not care.
Yeah.
Uh, Bill Belichick, he's mean and he's grumpy and he's nasty. He won a lot of Super Bowls.
Hmm.
Mike McCarthy or Matt LaFleur is a very damn good head coach, and he turns shit into quality teams. And and he, you know what? He swears and he screams and he has a temper. Like you've got to adapt, George. You can't have everything in your pretty little white gloved box.
But he doesn't get it.
He doesn't get it.
He just doesn't get it.
It's football.
Yep. That's you can't run a franchise like you're taking your mother to church. You just can't.
Yep. You're right. Ugh. Ooh, I'm so angry. Urgh. Oh God, George. I
It's disheartening after a while.
I just if I won the lottery, I would just hire a pilot to fly over Hallis Hall all day, every day with a sell the team thing hanging off the back of it.
On an old creaking biplane.
And 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 every billboard that George would pass from his house to Hallis Hall would be I would rent them all just saying, sell the team, George. Sell the team.
Yeah.
It would be written in purple so he'd notice. big purple block letters, sell the team.
Oh, now I can read it.
Let me put on my purple glasses. I can read it.
Purple glasses. Uh,
Oh God, I just can't, man. This team, it just God. I just don't know. Uh, I just don't know what the hell they're doing.
I don't either. I wish I had an answer for you. I really wish I did.
All right, where do you want to go from here?
Oh boy, from one disaster to another. The Blackhawks stink, but you know what? Connor Bedard's looking pretty good. That's worth something, right?
Yeah, I mean, uh, Anders Sorensen has not been like he is. There's been no miraculous turnaround. Uh, but Connor Bedard is playing a ton better under him, and the confidence is there. And honestly, I look look at Connor Bedard's numbers from this point in his career. It's Patrick Kane.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I know there's some people out there that are Connor Bedard is a bust.
Which
No,
is ridiculous.
like if at worst Connor Bedard is an all-star. Like that's his floor. Like it will he be like a one of the elite players of all time? I don't know. Time will tell. He's 19. He's 19 years old and he's on a terrible team with very little talent and he's had rotating lines like he rotates lines like most people rotate their underwear. It's it's been ridiculous and he's he's very good. Uh I don't know what his ceiling is, but he's not a bust.
Far from it. Far from it.
But Anders Sorensen, uh, Luke Richardson was 8-16-2 when he got fired.
Mm-hmm.
Sorensen, since taking over, is 6-9-0. That's obviously a better record. Is it a much better record? No, but it is better. Um, and I don't think he's a serious candidate for the permanent job. Would that be fair to say?
Oh no, no, he shouldn't be, honestly. Like he really, really shouldn't be.
Um, but yeah, I mean, you look at the job he's been doing, and um, and you're like, okay, they're taking steps forward. At this point in last season, they're better than they were last season, and if they continue to play better than they did in the first half, which even if they continue on the same trajectory under Sorensen that than they were before they fired Luke Richardson, they're on pace to be a good 10 points better than last year, 10, 12 points. And I would say that's an improvement. It's not the improvement we wanted, but I think the you know, looking at last year, how bad we were, there was no way we were going to do a 180 and just be this like fringe playoff team. Like that's too big of a jump from where you were. But I think as Blackhawks fans, we just expected to look better than it is. And what we're seeing is very uneven growth.
Yes. Yeah, I think that's a good way to put it.
Um, so I'm looking, Connor Bedard is on pace this year for 22 goals and 52 assists. Um, It is very similar numbers that Patrick Kane, Joe Sakic, Mark Messier, and Mike Modano and Dennis Savard had as 19-year-olds.
That's pretty good.
And that is a good group of players to be with.
Yeah, you think? That's it's pretty darn good.
Um, it seems like Bertuzzi and Bedard are playing better together.
Bertuzzi and Bedard are, in general, Taylor Hall has been, you know, around, but Teuvo Teravainen has
Tavo has
been
been great.
really good.
Yeah. And Tavo has been as good as Kurashev has been bad.
Oh yeah, Kirsch. Did you see that play from the other night in Detroit?
Yeah.
That was brutal.
Kurashev, this he's done as a Blackhawk, right? Like he's not
I
coming
mean,
back next year, right?
it's looking not good for him in that department. Yeah.
Um, yeah, I mean, Kurashev went from the second line center to getting a run with Bedard to healthy scratches under two different head coaches in the same season.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I don't know, but this team is frustrating. Is some nights you're like, okay, they're starting to get it, and it's weird because there are things under Richardson you're like, okay, they're not that bad, but other things are bad. And then under Sorensen, you're like, okay, those bad things got better, but then other things got worse. And it's they're not talented enough to just be competent at everything. They sort of have to focus their energy to be good at one thing and at the detriment of something else. Um, and it's just been frustrating. And it's gonna be frustrating too because you look and you're like, we've got 19-year-old Connor Bedard, 20-year-old Frank Nazar, 21-year-old Nolan Allen, 22-year-old Lucas Reichel, 22-year-old Wyatt Kaiser, 22-year-old Colton Dock, 23-year-old Crevier and Vlasic. You've got so many young players that they're not going to have linear growth. They're going to have uneven growth. It's going to be it's going to be good nights, bad nights, and you're going to have to live through those struggles. And I hope that uh, Davidson has a plan to bring in more talent to help even that out.
Right, exactly.
Um, the fans are showing up. That's good.
They are. I mean, the other night they had what, almost a sellout, about 19,000. That's close.
They're averaging almost 19,000 a game. The
Yeah.
right now the Blackhawks are averaging 18,789 uh, people a game. That's good. That's good attendance.
Yeah, that is.
Um, and last year they're like 1,100 people better than on average than last year.
Well, and I think part of it too is even if the overall team isn't winning that many more games, you're seeing the growth of Bedard. You're seeing some of the prospects start to come up, like Frank Nazar coming up, Colton Dock coming up. Because I think there was a really good attendance for Colton Dock's debut when they beat his brother, Kirby Dock, in the Habs. So, maybe there's a little bit of that going around. And maybe fans are just getting cheaper tickets too. So either way, about a month or so ago, I went to a game. There were a lot of empty seats. It was really dull and bleak. But, maybe things are going to look a little better as the season goes, especially if Bedard keeps playing better. So at least you got that going for them.
Right. Um, Goaltending's been a weird situation.
It has. It's like 1 minute, like you'll see Arvid Soderblom have a really good game, and then like the next day he'll just crap the bed. And same thing with Peter Mrazek.
Mrazek has been that this last month was real bad for him. It was not a December to remember.
He was also hurt, but
Um, but Soderblom, it's been weird because he was he was super unreliable last year. And they signed another goalie to replace him. That goalie's hurt. So Soderblom's forced to be up there. And he's got over a 900 save percentage. Like you're seeing better out of him. I don't know what that speaks about his future. Um, it's not a bad problem to have, but uh, I would say that Mrazek's probably um, nearing the end of his shelf life.
I mean, eventually you're going to need to, you know, get better. So you're going to need to either develop somebody, get somebody else in there, whatever that may be. You're going to have to make some changes in that department.
Oh, absolutely.
We know, I mean, in the long run, Peter Mrazek was going to be just the place filler for this team. He might be the place filler longer than we initially expected because he had a pretty good year last year, got a small extension, but that extension wasn't big, right? It was a pretty small one.
Uh, um, Penalty kill's been good.
Hasn't it been like the among the best in the NHL?
I don't know. I haven't looked at, but it's eyeball test. It's been it's been pretty good. Um, I mean, especially considering where they were last year, because they were terrible. Like they were one of the worst at last year. Um, this year it's been significantly better. Uh,
Yeah, it has, and I do give them credit for that.
um, yeah, I mean, there's things to be hopeful about with this team. There's just a long way to go.
Yes, yes, there is. Yes, there is.
And you've got to find, I was hoping that Connor Bedard would be an accelerant, and maybe he will be. But you just need something to accelerate the process because you've got a lot of young players, and you know there's a lot of promise. Like Nolan Allen over the last month and a half has gotten a lot better. Sam Rinzel has been playing pretty well. Um, you've you've got you've got some guys that you're really hopeful for, and you've got you know they've got to get time to play, and they've got to acclimate to the NHL more quickly.
Well, I mean, developing here is going to be key. Let's be real, that's something that the Blackhawks have not done a good job of in a long time. A long time. And you need some of these guys to start hitting on the NHL level. We've been giving a lot of passes to Lucas Reichel, and you see him skating on the ice doing things, but the scoring and the points, they ain't coming.
No,
They're not coming at all. They're just they're they're like these small little victory wins where you're like, well, he, was really good with the forecheck tonight. He was good skating, but he didn't shoot enough. It's like, well, eventually you gotta win with that. You have to start scoring. You have to get on the score sheet.
uh, yeah, it's just been tough, and you look at these games and you're just like, God, it's they give up so many goals, and they uh you watch them play, and there's things you're like, oh, this is they're starting to figure this out, and then next thing you know, they are giving up 3 goals in a couple of minutes, and it's frustrating.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Like yesterday, you're up 2-0 going into the second period, and then um
You're up 3-1 at one point.
yeah,
It's uh it's rough to see those losses, but we've come pretty used to those.
yeah, and then you start clawing your way back against uh the Red Wings, um, and you fall short, but it's you just watch these games, and you're just like, God. But then you have a really good game against the Avalanche, who's a really good team.
Yeah, you go and beat them. I think you've beaten them twice this year.
I believe you have. Um, so I don't know. I don't know how to. It's it's just super uneven, and you just really hope that whoever they bring in to be the head coach next year is is somebody that's really good. I don't want another, like, I'm not shitting on Anders Sorensen, but I want somebody better. I want,
Yes.
like, just somebody that's elite. That everybody else goes, shit, look who the Blackhawks brought in.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
And
I
I
agree.
don't know who that is. I just know it's not Anders Sorensen.
Right. He was called up from Rockford. Like, what can you expect there?
Uh, all right. Should we talk Bulls?
Sure.
I mean, same thing. This team, slightly different situation. The Blackhawks are inconsistent because they have like lack some talent and they have a lot of young players. The Bulls just aren't very good. Like, they're not terrible. They're just not good.
Right.
And, on certain nights, like, yeah, they look great. Like, look at Washington. They blew the barn doors off them.
I mean, Washington stinks, but yeah.
Things, but the Blackhawks aren't, or in the Bulls, sorry, aren't very good. And then you get, mud stomped by Indiana. You lose to Sacramento, who's not, they're just fine. What are they, 500? They're 500.
Yeah.
And
Though
you,
it seems like they've been playing better since they weirdly fired their coach, but they're still not, you're not playing Boston or Milwaukee or, even like the Cavaliers.
yeah. And you've got Zach Levine scoring at will. Um,
Yeah, he's on a roll right now.
yeah. So,
He's
like,
putting up 30 plus points every night.
yeah. But they lack size. They lack the ability to play defense down low. They perimeter defense, other than Lonzo Ball, is not very good. They're a scoring team. That's it. And
Yeah.
they they just lack a lot of any defense at all for the most part. It's frustrating. And Vooch has been playing pretty solid, but you've got to sell while the iron is hot, right?
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, I mean, uh I feel like you have got to trade anybody that will give you a return, right?
I mean, that's what I would do. I mean, you can't spend another year doing this whole play-in tournament thing. It's not going to get you anywhere. It's not going to win you anything meaningful.
Yeah. So we're like, what, like 3 weeks away from the trade deadline, somewhere around there.
Yeah,
Um, Vooch has got to be gone. I think Vooch, you got to trade no matter what.
correct.
Um, if you get something, awesome, but I think the odds of him playing to this level next year start diminishing. Um,
I agree.
I I would say trade Zach, but I just don't feel you're going to get value for him. And he's playing well. Like, is he playing defense? But no, but he's so proficient offensively that you have, he's going to make a really good team better. And you've got to get compensated for that.
Yeah. Yes, I agree.
Um, and Patrick Williams, just
Uh, no,
no, he's not playing well.
no.
I mean,
And you paid him money.
paid him money.
And how's that looking? Not too good.
Yeah, so it's just really frustrating. This team really does need size. They need a big man. Maybe if you could get a big man as part of a, you know, the you know, but you may, I'm sure our fans know, but you've got to sort of balance out those salaries when you're making trades in the NBA. Um, so that's why like those like trade genie things that are online, those are mostly to not the anybody would make those trades. It's the financials work of it because you've got to have somewhat even trade. Where in the NFL you can trade a player for a draft pick and there's no compensation financially that has to come back to even it out. But in the NBA there is. So it's really hard to dump a salary because like sometimes an expiring salary is a big thing because you can use that as a trade chip by taking on somebody else's bad contract that has a few years, but you're getting a expiring contract and you're getting draft capital for it. Um, I some like with Zach's contract, I you're gonna have to take on somebody's money, and I don't know what that compensation you're gonna get is gonna look like.
Yeah, I don't either. I mean, because you really want first round picks, right? Like that's the ideal thing.
Yeah. Um, that would be ideal. But I just don't know, um, what you're actually gonna get. And
I don't either. That's the tough thing. I really don't either.
you look at that the Bulls draft pick, they might not even get their first round draft pick
Yeah, that's right, because it's protected, isn't it?
protected. So they've got to basically be in the lottery. Um, and let's see, what is it protected? The It is top 10 protected. So they've got to get a top 10 pick to keep their first round pick.
All right. And
Um,
what trade was that? Was that from the Vooch trade?
that was the DeMar Rosen sign in trade.
That's right. That's right.
Uh, but we still haven't finalized the Laurie Markkinen trade.
And how long ago was that?
Oh God, it's how many teams has he been on? Um,
Multiple.
but yeah, we have Portland, Portland's first round pick, but it's top 14 protected. So what a Portland right now, like they are, they would they have the seventh best odds of getting the number. So there's no way that they're gonna uh give us that pick. We're not getting that. But we're right on the cusp. So ours is top 10 protected. So we're like a right there with it's like Chicago, San Antonio, Phoenix, Golden State, Atlanta, Sacramento, Detroit are all like within a game and a half of each other. And and the Bulls are just inside that window of not having to give up their first round draft pick. Uh
Cool.
like be to to be a bad team, lose your first round draft pick, still not get that first round draft pick of Portland from the marketing trade and still not have financial space to sign somebody. Like like Arturas Karnisovas has not been what we had hoped.
No, it's been very disappointing.
And I know
There's
he's
no question about that,
and I know he's up against a bad situation with ownership,
to say the least. Yeah.
but it's very frustrating. And I think at this point we've all expected more.
Right.
Ugh. Is there anything baseball going on?
Um, Waiting on the Cubs to do more. Oh no, wait, they signed Colin Ray.
Oh yeah. Signed Colin Ray.
Nice mid four ERA pitcher from Milwaukee. Maybe he's just depth. I don't know. But yeah, I'm not holding my breath for Roki Sasaki, that's for sure.
No, they don't seem to. I'm surprised he has not done anything yet. It's
Well, it'll be this week. It'll be this week with the deadline. So,
um, but it does not sound like the Cubs are anticipating anything. And who was the corresponding 40-man roster move for Colin Ray?
did they even make one yet?
They have to, right? They were at
They
like
were, but have they announced what it was?
I have not heard anything.
Because, well, I know they DFA'd Miles Mastroboni before the move, so I don't know if something's been done since then, but
Wasn't that though for that
might have been for something else,
that
though.
was for
Yeah.
Matt Festa.
Right, yeah. Which that's kind of one of those trying to find the diamond in the rough that you kind of have to find if you're a hopeful contender. So whatever, but yeah, they gave Colin Ray $5 million.
Woo!
You need a legit arm in that rotation, not just more experimental slash garbage. Listen, if you're not going to get a guy like Roki Sasaki, then go get Jack Flaherty. I'd rather get a risky move like Jack Flaherty than because the ceiling, the potential reward is going to be much higher than than a mediocre pitcher. But now, if they get another arm and Colin Ray is a depth guy, okay. Even if you get another high end starter and Colin Ray is your fifth starter, okay. The problem is, I feel like you had two slots to fill in your rotation at least. You know you have Steele, you know you have Imanaga, you know you have Tyone. If your solutions are Matthew Boyd and Colin Ray, fuck off. It just fuck off, Jed. And there is an alarming number of budget talk going on. Wouldn't you say?
Yeah, I
I don't like it.
I it leads right to the next point I wanted to make. Um, the Cubs made a big trade to bring in Kyle Tucker, and then they're squabbling with him over like $2.5 million.
Oh
And
yeah, that's the other news, which is annoying.
in the grand, it, honestly, you know what it makes me feel like?
Hmm.
That he's a one and done, and they're resigned to the fact that he's going to be one and done with the Cubs.
The way I see it is, am I saying it's a guarantee that he wouldn't sign an extension for that reason? No, but I am getting that growing feeling that this is indeed a one and done deal. Like I could totally see them doing that.
Yeah, I don't think the $2.5 million would be the reason he wouldn't resign because
Right.
I think hasn't his agent already said he's going to free agency, so it's going to be regardless of that money, he's going to the highest bidder. But it makes me feel like if the Cubs were hell bent on keeping him, they would be they would have agreed to that $2.5 million, and they would be at least trying to make offers now to sign him. Because if he makes a big splash this year, his price is going to go through the roof.
Oh, yeah, he could be a 500 plus million player with the way this market's evolving.
Yeah. So I just the way though that they're just not they're they're like arguing about $2.5 million and going to arbitration over this. It just makes me feel like Jed is not going to consider signing him to a long-term deal. Not that there's bad blood or anything. They just I feel like, oh, you know what? That's our big swing this year, and then we'll try to grow homegrown players after that.
Yeah, yeah, I get a similar feeling too. I'm right there with you.
Yeah, like I'm not one of those people that's reading into oh, that's now he's going to be angry and he's not going to want to sign. Like, no, this is all business. But the fact that the Cubs are willing to do that just sends the wrong signal to me, to your fans. And you're traipsing this guy out to Cubs fan convention, and and he's still going through arbitration. Jeez, like it just screams you're stupid and cheap.
Right. Yeah, it's just not a good look. It's not a look you want to see.
Like, I'm not saying that I need every one of my teams to have the deepest pockets and spend wildly, but man, I wish my teams weren't cheap.
I know. I know.
Like, it's so frustrating. Like, why do we have to be cheap? We're I get the landscape of baseball is changing, and maybe Jed is afraid to sign a big contract because of the the revenue in baseball model is in the process of a rapid change.
Yeah, and there's this more and more growing sense that shit with Marquee, something's not right there, man. You know what I just
I don't understand why Marquis didn't didn't try to pull in the Cubs, the Sox, and the Blackhawks into their already existing platform that already had uh you know distribution through Comcast. Like, that seems like it would have been, I mean, maybe that was Jerry not being interested in it, but
well, yeah, the Sox and the Bulls, no, but I did think there was a chance that the Blackhawks could have gotten in on that. But
I
again, I don't know how that all goes, so
think there's ties there because they co-own
the
the
United Center.
yeah, they co-own the stadium together. So
Yeah,
there might be something along those lines where,
very well could be, yes.
but I, it's already weird. Like, Marquee has expanded to have a bear show, and even though they
They
don't,
have the Sky, they have the rugby team.
yeah, like it makes me feel like they realize that they're they have to have a better value proposition because it's expensive to have that. If
It is.
it, you're not already on Comcast, um, or some cable provider that has it, like it's like 20 some dollars a month. And like that's and you're only getting baseball with Cubs on it. That's it. You're getting one team and 155 games, like, because some of them are national games. So
Right. Yeah, right.
it's 162 minus the national games. Like, so, uh, if they were broadcasting all of the minor league games, and, you had other stuff like, there's just the value is not there. Like, I canceled it in the off season. As soon as the Cubs were out of it, I canceled it. I was like, I'll just listen to the last remaining games on the radio, and I don't know if I'll resubscribe for next year. It's like, what value is it bringing? Like, I can
Right.
I can listen to the games on the radio. I like the radio announcers better anyway. Uh,
Yeah, Pat, listen to Pat Hughes.
yeah. So I agree with you. I don't know where Markey stands. And then we all know that regional sports networks in as a whole are
They're
just
dying.
they're
Yeah.
they're like on death's door if they haven't already died. Um so the market in baseball is changing. And I wonder if Jed is scared to sign somebody to like one of those $500 million deals, and then suddenly the revenue drops for baseball and they're caught in that, you know.
Yeah.
Uh
Well, there's probably gonna be a strike in a few years too,
Probably.
right? I mean that's because that CBA ends in what, 26? I want to say
Uh,
in a few years. But people are already talking about how it's almost inevitable that there's going to be some sort of work stoppage.
the MLB collective bargaining agreement expires at midnight on December 1st, 2026.
There you go. So you don't have that many seasons before that happens,
Yes.
right? You have two.
So I wonder if that goes into the process because um, I feel like big changes are going to be on the horizon because by that point, we're going to have a really good idea of where revenue is coming in baseball.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Yes, we are.
And I don't think there's going to be teams that can just spend $300 million and be profitable.
Right.
And the Ricketts are running this team to make a profit.
Mm-hmm.
At first, they were like, "Oh, we're investing, we want to win," but they're trying to make a profit, and they want their investment to grow, and that's where they're going to see the most significant profit. But they want to make money off of it while their investment is also growing, and they're double dipping in there, and that cuts into what you're giving the fans.
Exactly.
Uh, it's just depressing. I just wanted to I just want a nice day. Want a nice day.
Yeah, I know. I know.
Uh, the White Sox signed Omar Narvaez
Stop the presses.
to a minor league deal
Stop the presses.
with an invitation to major league camp.
Whoop-de-doo.
White Sox also signed Josh Rojas.
Who I kind of wanted on the Cubs. Because the Cubs need some more depth. Badly. Because if
Well,
you look at their depth chart, as it projects right now,
I mean, there's a certain third baseman the Cubs are looking at,
yeah, I know who you're talking about.
and it's the one that I talked about that the Cubs might go after the season before, and you were not happy about. But here we are that they might go after him this year. Uh, I, I've changed my tune. I don't want Yohan Moncada as a third baseman.
I mean, I don't really either, but you got to do something.
Uh,
You can't. Vidal Brujan can't be your guy.
what about Gage Workman?
You mean the guy who hasn't played above double A ball?
Uh, I heard somebody refer to him as internal competition.
Oh, cool.
But yeah, yeah, I don't want Vidal Sassoon to be the backup third baseman.
Yeah, no.
You're probably too young to remember Vidal Sassoon. That was that was like an '80s thing.
Yeah, I've heard of it, but yeah, that was definitely before my time.
That and Jordache jeans. Those were popular things in the '80s.
Yeah.
Back when the Bears were good.
So you mean when they weren't a laughing stock? Better times?
Well, I think that's going to do it for this episode of Bill Swerski Sports Talk Chicago. I want to thank everybody so much for listening. Please hit subscribe however you listen to podcasts, whether it's iTunes, Stitcher, YouTube, Google Play, Spotify, etc. Share this podcast with your friends. That's how we grow the show. Follow us on social media at Swerski Sports, Facebook.com/Swerski Sports, SwerskiSports.com, or ShyFanPat2 for Alex on Twitter /X, or AlexanderJPatCreative.com for all the cool stuff that Alex does. And again, thank you guys so much for listening. Until next time, bear down.
Cubs win! What a lucky break! The good Lord wants the Cubs to win!
We thank Ditka and God for all they have provided.
Cubs win! Cubs win! Cubs win!
Oh, I don't want her. You can have her. She's a Packer fan. She can't fit in my van.
And she looks like number New Yorkers. Smoking crack is not legal on planes. Bears 31 to -7. The Bears.
Oh, when the Bears